We have wonderful member organisations within the CCMA, and many of them do some fantastic work in the whole area of digital space. We see Rapid Direct, we see VHI doing some work on their claim side. We see a lot of good work that's going on out there at this moment in time. And then there's the rest of the member organisations that are very much starting out, and we're trying to catch up in some respects. And from a point of view of insurance, trying to develop some connection with customers is challenging. You only really get to talk to customers maybe once a year, and that's normally at the renewal, which is something that customers ring us about frequently, to talk about the renewal price, and we don't have the opportunity in between to talk about other things. So we're trying to go on a journey now to try and understand what are the things that are going to be relevant, and we heard about the whole thing about emotional connection and the relevance, and trying to connect in there and be meaningful to our customer base, and understanding that it's a younger generation that's coming along that'll expect this, and it'll become the norm and the standard, and if we're not there, they'll just go somewhere else, as we have seen many evidences of during the presentation. So we're trying to get into that space and get in there quickly. And as I say, a lot of companies do that very, very well. My own experience, probably over the last few weeks, I had reason to get into a web chat discussion with an organisation not in Ireland, and I have to say it wasn't a good experience. I found it very poor, and I actually the web chat session terminated before I even had the answer, so I came away none the wiser and ended up being that frustrated customer having to pick up a phone and try and get an answer again, at such point that I had disengaged and had gone somewhere else. And I know there was a statistic there at the beginning, about 62% of people will actually try and come away from a web chat and start going to the phone for assistance. So I think we have loads of examples where people do it really, really well, and we're just following in the FBD context, and I'm sure other member organisations the same. And it's so exciting to see where we could go with this stuff, and certainly probably intimidating in some other respects, because technology is moving at such a fast pace. And as I say, it's about the enablement factor and trying to keep up with the expectation of our customers and our new future generation of customers going forward, what their expectation is, and the blue dot scenario and all of that. So
I think, yeah, I mean, big brands definitely are looking to play. It's very easy for a startup company to play in that experiential space. Yeah. They move faster. It's like oil tanker versus speedboat, So a small company can flex fast. They can be close to their customers because there's less of them. And whereas as big businesses understand, they need to do the same. So I was in the Westfield shopping mall in London there last week, and the Nestlé chocolatery is there. So Nestlé Kit Kat chocolatery is there. So it's their third chocolatery store. So you can go in and you can, for £7, which actually is very cheap for what you get, you personalise your Kit Kat via a kiosk. So you choose your chocolate, dark white and milk. You choose your toppings, literally 20, 30 chili flakes, everything you want. Then you personalise your packaging. And then behind the glass, a guy makes it for you, and you watch it being made, melted and made, and out comes your personalised Kit Kat, authentic, genuine, and it's experiential. And of course, you share that. And Kit Kat's a big, nasty brand, big old brand. And so, yes, all the old brands are looking at ways to reconnect and basically to grow a beard. So
I've achieved that.
They're looking to be that kind of connected hipster brand, and yeah, there is a way you can do it. You just need to understand how you can connect, and connection is always to do with what do you want. To connect with people is what do you want? What do you want now? And if I give you what you want now, or excite you right now, then that's the connection. So how you do that using AI is you can do it. The big brands don't need to be scared of it, but you do need to think about it a bit. Because it gets creepy sometimes if big brands try and connect when you don't want them to connect.
I work in a technology company, so a lot of the work that I do is really around making sure that we think about the customer experience before we think about putting the technology in, because actually the technology shouldn't be driving the experience, the customer should. And that's the dilemma, because like most big companies, BT being one very big company, we've got a lot of legacy there as well that we also have to take into account that was probably never built with the customer in mind. So actually around that sort of applying that intelligence, so if we look at things like AI, I think too many people are deploying AI maybe as a chatbot on the front end, and then, we were just talking about this earlier, it drops into a conversation which it can't cope with, and you just get stuck. So you don't know where to go. So actually you need to connect that front end with your back end because actually the most powerful way of doing it is using chatbot, the chatbot as your front end, your triage, if you like, your IVR for digital. And if it can't cope, it should then drop into an agent seamlessly with the right skills. And the lovely thing is it can skills-based route because it's found out a bit about what you want. So you can take that and actually route it to an agent that can hopefully pick that conversation up, can see what's been said already. So you can start to create a seamless process. But the trouble is you've got to connect that sexy front end with the not so sexy back end. And unless you do that, you don't get a good experience. I'm working with a couple of the startup banks. Atom Bank, for example, in the UK, claims that they want to be the world's first psychic bank. So they're employing, they don't have any branches, they don't have a contact center, they have an app. Now it's easy for them because everything happens through that app. That's their portal into you. That's how they learn about you. And they've put machine learning technologies up there so they can actually start to personalize that. And then from personalization, they can start to be a little bit more proactive. And then eventually they can get a bit more predictive. And that's really building on things. But it's easy for them because they've got no legacy. They've started with a certain customer set that want to interact that way, that don't want a bank branch. And they've made it easy for them because there's only one thing that they have to look at, whereas most of us have multiple channels. I'm in an innovation team, so a lot of the stuff that I do is around let's actually look at some of these technologies and look at applying it and running trials and running experiments and proof of concepts. Anyone can do that. It's not necessarily expensive. The one thing that a lot of large organizations do resist is failure, though, because actually when you're looking at innovation, almost inevitably there's going to be failure. And if you're afraid of failure, you're never going to innovate. So a lot of the work that we do, we just up front say, well, let's try this stuff. And if we fail fast and we fail cheap, but we learn an awful lot. We can then start to apply that learning to improving and innovating. So I think large organizations, there's no excuse not to do it. It's just, it can be difficult. And like most things around customer experience, I firmly believe that customer experience is a change program. You've got to change in order to do this stuff differently. It's not just incremental bits and pieces I stick on. It's all about change, and that's people, process, and technology.
What I always say to them, actually, the easiest thing most businesses need to do is to put some young talent on their board. So one of the problems we have is we have very undiversified boards all over the world. And the board is ultimately making the strategic financial decisions about investment in technology. So they don't understand why there needs to be a 60 million investment in the back end or, all that kind of stuff. So generally there's two problems. One is age and one is gender. So it's a very much a greying gorilla back board in most organizations. And what they need to do is and I'm not suggesting you put two 30-year-olds on the board for the sake of it. You find the two 30-year-olds that are hot talent in the company and you put them on the board quickly, or else you create a shadow board underneath the main board that basically whose job is to actually connect to the people outside that window. Because like it or not, none of us in this room have any idea what's going on in the heads out there. We like to think we are. We like to think we're down with the kids. But those kids are so different to the kids that we were. Like so different. And anyone who has kids who are 12, 13, 14, you already see that. You're like, what? Their cultural norms are different, their social norms are different. So you can try as much as you can to try and plug the gap, but ultimately the gap, you need to listen to the gap. You need to get them in. So the interns in the organizations have more to tell you than the research studies you're commissioning. They're close. So I mean, things like messaging apps, anything that brings you closer to the actual customer is critical. Listen to what they're saying, listen to the conversations they want to have. So really it is about getting that close and getting to understand, and that there's a big chasm in a lot of companies, which is sad.